Coming up on today's show.
There's like several different mindsets for people, and I think it's very personality dependent how we feel about our accomplishments every day.
She uses a planner, and she has the, she even has it prioritized. I think some of it is just like remembering.
So one of the key things about that particular situation is knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are.
The mindset of accomplishment, today on Keeping You Organized. Well, hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to talk about the mind, having the mindset for accomplishing things, getting things done. And when we talk about that, we talk about productivity, but sometimes our mind gets in the way. So we're going to have a discussion today. We're going to bring on Geraldine Thomas from Metropolitan Organizing. Geraldine, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Thank you so much, John and Leanne. It's always nice to be back.
Yes, Leanne is still recovering from her big costume thing from a couple days ago. So, it's one of those things where we're going to have to get her through this, and maybe we'll bring her back on camera. I don't know. But anyway, the concept we're going to talk about today is this idea of accomplishing. People, when they want to do time management, when they want to do productivity, they want to feel successful. They want to feel like they've accomplished something. But I think sometimes our mind gets in the way. And what I want to talk about today is when it's kind of giving us false signals, when it's saying, you're not accomplishing much, when you really are, and maybe how we can deal with that. So does that sound like something that we can jam on here, Geraldine?
I think so. Let's just see what we can get out of there. Okay. We'll use you as our guinea pig.
Yeah, I think, before we started here, we had a conversation about my wife, who has a lot going on, multiple things. She's got a business, she's got kids, we're homeschooling, all kinds of things like that. And she said to me, I feel like today I didn't get anything done. And then about 15 minutes later, she goes and says, boom, 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 I got this done. I said, well, which one is it? And then she said, yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, why did I think I got nothing done when I actually did? So, and my initial thought was, well, what about, tracking or accomplishing? How do you know you've accomplished something if you haven't really... I mean, she's got the to-do lists and she's got calendars and all that stuff. So have you run into this with clients before?
Yes. As a matter of fact, there's like several different mindsets for people. And I think it's very personality dependent how we feel about our accomplishments every day. So I'll give you an example. Some people feel really scattered and don't know where to start. And this is often, what some organizers call spinning or churning. There's all kinds of names for it. But when that happens, I think one of the best things to do is use, the Eisenhower matrix. You take all your tasks, and for visual people, they might write them on sticky notes or index cards, and you make a grid, and there's 4 sections to the grid. One of the sections is urgent, the other is non-urgent, the other is important but not urgent. So there's, people should look for the Eisenhower matrix on YouTube and watch the video of this, because it's very helpful for a lot of people. And once you start sorting out, even the clients that I work with, and right now I'm working with a lot of professional organizers who are starting businesses, right? So they feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. Where do I begin? I don't know where to begin. Or they'll tell me, I spent 6 hours at my desk yesterday and I didn't accomplish anything. And maybe this is part 2 or part 3 or part 4 of one of our coaching calls. And I'll go through my checklist from the notes that I've taken from previous calls. And then when it comes down to it, kind of like what you're saying with your wife, they're saying, yes, I did do that. Yes, I did this. Yes. So there's always kind of they feel like they're not accomplishing much. And then, of course, there are the people that are not accomplishing much. So this is like multi-levels, if you will.
Right.
So the first thing is I recommend sort the tasks into a grid, decide what's urgent, decide what's important but not urgent, and then, keep going along. Now, a lot of people who deal with chronic disorganization or ADHD. The problem is they can't decide what's urgent or important. You know, which one should I focus on? Mm-hmm. This is urgent, but it feels urgent to them, but it might not be urgent. So then I say, well, let's use this if we're just dealing with business situations. What is going to help earn income? And then suddenly that clarifies it for them.
Right.
So if it's going to be something like they're trying to develop an online class, or they're going to work on their social media marketing. So long term, which one is going to help you, generate income? Probably the online class that you can, it'll have a start and a finish date. Now, for somebody like your wife, since she is working with a to-do list, you said, is it on paper or?
Yeah. She uses a planner, and she has the, she even has it prioritized. I think some of it is just like remembering, and maybe that's a systems kind of thing. Maybe it's as simple as just checking something off, but or maybe there's some kind of routine or something you can do at the end of an evaluation period. Let's quickly evaluate this in a logical way, instead of letting, this day, I've been running, and so.
Right. And oftentimes I've found that people in caretaking situations, so you said, she's homeschooling children. Yep. She's busy tending to everyone else's needs. Yes. So a lot of times psychologically, she's put her own needs on the background. She knows there's a lot to do. And for many, many parents, they feel like they're just putting out fires all day long, right? So somebody's crying for something, or somebody needs a diaper change, or somebody needs a meal made for them, or to be shuttled to sports or music activities. So she may, in her mind, feel like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of fragmented. I'm not feeling like I'm accomplishing everything. But at the end of the day, if she is really productive, and of course not wasting time, doesn't sound like she has time to waste time, she's probably checking a lot more off that list. And I do think it's a good idea to piggyback one task off another and kind of link your habits. That's the way some people think of that. So, maybe while you're dinner, if you're, I'll just make this up, like baking potatoes or cooking rice, that's a 30-minute task. You might always think to yourself, while that's going on, I'm going to fold laundry, or before I go to bed, I'm going to run the dishwasher. And while my coffee is brewing in the morning, I'm going to unload the dishwasher. Those are kind of things that you can, I call it like muscle memory, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A friend of mine who is a golf professional told me about when you take a golf shot and it's a bad shot, and the difference between a pro and an amateur is the next shot, typically the pro recovers and starts hitting good shots again, where the amateur just goes downhill. And this just spurred a thought about, you're having this good day of productivity, and then a disruption comes in. Someone interrupts you, you get derailed for, maybe it's a half hour, maybe you don't finish the thing you're on. And then at the end of the day, you're going, oh, this day, it just, it derailed. And is there a mindset thing there that we can kind of, let's just accept what happened and move on? Or how would you coach someone in that?
So one of the key things about that particular situation is knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. So sometimes people are very in touch with, I absolutely do not want to be disturbed while I'm writing an essay or writing a brief or whatever it is. So that takes all of their concentration, and they know if they're pulled off that task, for example, they have a hard time recovering. So someone like that, I would advise them in particular to either set an alarm clock and get up really in the morning and do their writing, or wait until all distractions are gone, your kids are in bed, the office is quiet, everybody's gone home. That's when you should focus on your writing. If you find that you can, get back if that's one of your energetic periods. Right. Other people find that, they can get back on task. Maybe let's go back to writing for a moment. It doesn't bother them to have this constant flow of interruptions. They can get right back on it. So part of it is knowing your strengths and weaknesses, what really does derail you versus which interruptions are welcome. Now, from an organizing standpoint, one of the, perks, I'll say, of I'll use myself as an example. I like to build white space. I call it white space in my calendar. So I know if I'm going to, the dentist appointment and maybe taking Pip to the vet and all these other things, I like to cushion in 10 minutes, each direction for traffic problems, or something could go wrong. Sometimes somebody calls on my mobile and I have to take the call. So I can sit in the parking lot and think, okay, I'm here already. I can relax, chill out. And I know I'm going to be at that appointment on time, and it's not going to frazzle me or put the person who's taking care of, me off their schedule. Now, one of the other things I've learned, and this is something I share with all of my clients so I know that that's a stressor for me, right? To be late for an appointment or not be punctual. It just drives me crazy. I don't appreciate when other people are running late, and I don't like to be late. So one of the things I have stopped doing is I have stopped giving exact times when I'll be somewhere. Sounds kind of counter, not so productive. But what I'll do now is, let's say I'm meeting a girlfriend for lunch, and I will tell her, I will meet you at whatever restaurant between, 11:45 and 12 noon. That way she knows, hang out, I'll text you when I get there. And I find with clients, it's just a much more, easy, kind of relaxing way to do business. And I've had at least a dozen clients tell me that they've adopted that, and they said it brings a lot of peace of mind to them, not having to be someplace at 11 a.m. sharp. If they build in, some people are comfortable with 30 minutes, 11 to 11:30, they're arriving at their friend's house. It takes a lot of heat off them. So does that help answer your question?
Absolutely. And I guess we can also at this time promote our podcast that we did about always being late, where we psychoanalyzed me. That was a year or two ago. But anyway.
Yeah, let's bring that up again.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Now, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about a professional, maybe a professional organizer, since you work with so many of them and help them, and how they, kind of balance that work and life in this whole concept of the mindset of accomplishment. We're with Geraldine Thomas from Metropolitan Organizing, and we'll be right back. Get organized now at myorganize.life. Need to turn those piles into files? We've got you covered. Hundreds of organizing products in a dazzling array of colors and sizes. There's an organizing solution for you. Shop online and they're delivered right to your office. Get organized now. Go to myorganize.life. That's myorganize.life. Get organized now at myorganize.life. We're back now and keeping you organized, talking about the mindset of accomplishment, getting things done and actually believing it, I think, is one of the themes going on here. Especially highly productive people end up doing a lot of stuff, and sometimes your mind can tell you, even though you're doing a lot of stuff, you haven't done anything. So we had this discussion started before the break with Geraldine Thomas, Metropolitan Organizing. And Geraldine, I want to go into this concept of, I know you work with professional organizers, you coach a lot of new organizers, and what are some of the tips that you give them? Because I'm sure that mental pressure is even more on them. It's kind of like the shoemaker who doesn't have shoes for his own kids. How do you keep them maybe organized in their own personal life so that they can be a professional organizer in their business life?
Well, here's the truth. A lot of organizers are excellent at organizing other people, right? But they fall short on taking time to take care of their own business. And oftentimes it's what I call laying the foundation of their business. So I'll just throw an example out here, like marketing and branding, right? Everybody wants to jump into, I'm going to be on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. When they think of marketing and branding, they might think of, I'm going to go pick out my colors, I'm going to have a logo developed, I'm going to build a website. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes to that, right? So it might be your process or the words you're using or writing a thorough about page or your call to action buttons. Those are just a few of the things. So what I want everybody to do, any business owner or any parent, right? Because stay-at-home parents are running a business. It's just their home. But practicing mindfulness, and you don't have to believe it's woo-woo out there kind of new agey stuff. There's a lot of good things that come from being mindful and taking your time and paying attention to what you're doing. We talked a minute ago about building white space in your calendar and finding ways to adjust things like that so that you are aware, you're mindful, and you're purposeful about what your stress points are. And you learn to maybe work with those or embrace them or work around. A lot of people don't stop to actually take time to let their accomplishments land. I worked with somebody who's very successful, like went right down the checklist that we created, kind of sailed through everything, created her business forms, mastered faster, but she wasn't really taking time to let any of this land. She was just going from one thing to the next without stopping to think about it. Kind of like when people lose weight. I know this is like an analogy that's probably overused too much. You can lose pounds, you can lose inches, you can firm up and have the weight kind of redistributed if you're building muscle. So it's going to look different for every single person. And part of it is just learning to recognize what you're looking for, what you need, and taking time to do that, letting it register.
Right. Well, yeah, now my mind is racing here because we've kind of talked about a lot of different things, but back to this, I think that we're onto something about also celebrating victories. So I think about to like a sales, when you were talking about maybe someone who's new and they make a sale. In a lot of sales organizations, if you're in a big room, they'll ring a bell. Well, they'll do something to celebrate. When you're on your own at home, and again, you may think that, oh, I made 50 calls and I got one sale. This has not been an accomplishment, where that might be a good accomplishment. So how do you tell people to celebrate maybe their victories?
Well, and to me, I would even back that up and say one of the accomplishments that you should be celebrating is that you completed 50 calls, right? That in itself is worth letting it land for a minute and taking a deep breath, or taking 5 deep breaths and thinking, wow, I made 50 calls today. And if I make 50 calls next Wednesday and 50 calls the following Wednesday, you start adding it up. It's a cumulative process. So it's always like, putting a little bit of money in the bank. After a while, if you don't withdraw, you're going to have a nice big fat savings, or a foundation, for the example of the organizer or small business owner.
Right. Now, when you're working with the professional organizers, what do you see as the top 1 or 2 things that maybe in their mind makes them not feel like they're being successful? Is it like maybe too much expectations, or what do you see?
Yeah, managing their expectations is definitely a very difficult thing for a lot of new organizers. And they have higher expectations. They perhaps have never owned a business before, but they think they're going to be earning sales, like Richard Branson from Virgin, Virgin Air. Right. It doesn't work that way in our industry. And we're also doing everything. Many of us are doing everything on our own. So you're wearing the, marketing hat, the sales hat, the admin hat. It's tough to row your own boat and get every single thing done that needs to be done. So that's probably one of the biggest things. Do
you have and I know a lot of people say when you're in that situation, you maybe outsource or help get a contract helper or something like that. Do you have any rules of thumb for that, on when it's not time for you to be doing this anymore and having someone else do it?
I have lots of advice for people on that one. Some of it is, of course, there's a temptation in our industry, believe it or not, John, we are control freaks, a lot of us, right? We think we can do everything better than the next person. So we have a tendency not to want to let go of things. Or several of us have the mentality, my way or the highway. Not such a great mindset, because a lot of times you just are being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, and somebody else comes along and it might not be the way that you're going to do it. It might actually be a better way to do it. So that's one thing I would say. The other is a lot of people think that they have to wait till they can afford to outsource. But I would say if you know that you're not strong in, bookkeeping or balancing whatever or follow up. Here, we'll give an even better one because everybody probably uses the bookkeeping example. If you're not a deal closer, if you're an introvert and cannot stand talking on the phone or going to networking meetings and shaking hands and greeting people and making small talk, my advice would be you can't afford to keep doing that because you're missing out on sales opportunities. So put a salesperson out there on your behalf. You go do the hands-on organizing, but have somebody who is extroverted and happy and can make small talk and wants to go to luncheons and cocktail parties in the evening. Put them out there on behalf of your company.
Right.
Or on the phone answering the calls.
Well, these are just incredible pearls of wisdom, and I think we're going to be out of time here. So before we go, let's talk a little bit more about your services. I know it's more in coaching than it is in organizing, but tell us how people can get a hold of you and what kinds of things you do.
Okay, I offer one-on-one coaching. Each session is 60 minutes, and it's done like we're doing right now with video or just telephone if people don't want to do that. It's called an Ask Me Anything call. There's no obligation. It's not a big, long, 18-month program where you're shelling out thousands of dollars. It's one call at a time. You can really ask me anything. You can find me at metropolitanorganizing.com. I'm on all kinds of social media. And in addition to coaching organizers and doing some hands-on organizing, I also have products for professional organizers, business forms in particular, for people who have started their organizing business and maybe need advice on letters of agreement or gift certificates. Or my new Organizer's Essential Pack is probably my best-selling packet, and it's 120 pages, so of good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Geraldine, we hope people will rush there, especially if they're someone trying to be a professional organizer. I know there's a lot of budding professional organizers out there, and we don't want them to have the mindset of not being able to accomplish anything because they're bogged down. So, well, thank you, Geraldine, again, and I'm sure we'll have you back.
Sounds great, John. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, there you go. I think now you have a better understanding of the mind game that goes on in accomplishment. Of course, we've got to have the tools in place, the to-do list, the calendars, but think about the mind and think about some of these tips that Geraldine provided today, and then we will see you on our next successful episode of Keeping You Organized.